Okay, I'll reintroduce myself. Hi, I'm Mary Cardona. I'm with Wisconsin Community Media. I'm the executive director. Also joining me today is Timm. He is the director of Oshkosh Media and also the president of WCM. This is the session on law and PEG. We're going to go over just a few things that I see as important to understand about PEG, and some things that are a little exciting, like ASCAP and BMI news that we have for you, and also the importance of written policies. But our prepared remarks are going to just take up just a part of this session. What we really want to do is make sure that if you have questions about anything about law or written policies or managing, that this is the place that you can come and ask us those questions, because Jake's got years of experience as a manager and I've got years of experience just on the legal regulatory end of things. Okay, so the piece that I gave to you, I don't have a PowerPoint, it's just the handout. Okay, so this is the first part of this is just going over the basics of PEG, so that in case you're kind of new to this, that you understand the field's regulation and laws regarding PEG in which you work. Okay, so first of all, Wisconsin is called a state franchise state. Cable companies are, there's federal law regulating cable companies, but in the early 2000s, a lot of states went to these state franchise laws. And the franchising of cable companies moved from the local level, like municipalities, to the state level. In the past, what happened was a municipality would negotiate a franchise agreement with a cable company. Usually it was about 10, 15 years. And they would do a needs assessment to determine what the needs of the community were. Then they would bring that data to the negotiating table and say, because of this, we need so many access channels, we need so much operational funding, we need so much capital funding, we need you to improve your system here because we've been noticing there's a lot of outages or problems in this area of our town, all that kind of thing. They would work it out, they would come up with a package, and that would be the package for 10 or 15 years. Now, what's happened under state franchising is there's a statute. There's no negotiation. There's no community needs assessment. There is what is in the law. And unfortunately, that law is extremely static, and it's not serving PEG channels. So that's what you need to understand at base, that we have a terrible law in the state of Wisconsin. The second thing that I'm going over here is another basic point, is that the video service provider fees that remain. So federal law allows you to assess a 5% fee on cable companies. And in Wisconsin in 2019, that was reduced to a maximum of 4%. But that amount of a fee that municipalities collect on the gross revenue of cable companies is only on the cable TV side of their revenue. It's not on the information services side or the internet side. So anything they make from internet, we don't get a bite of at all. It's only on cable TV. And that is why a lot of municipalities are very worried, because as cable subscribers go down, the revenues to municipalities is also going down. So because of state law, the only money we are getting from cable companies to support PEG stations, public education and government access, is this franchise fee, or now called a video service provider fee. In the past, when it was a local franchising process, we were also able to negotiate for what we call a PEG fee. And that was a dedicated pot of money to just support capital needs of PEG and sometimes even operating. But that was eliminated with the state law. So, okay. So, what was grandfathered in state law was the amount of the franchise fee, or now called a video service provider fee, that municipalities could collect. So whatever a municipality collected in January of 2008 was what they could collect going forward into the future under the state law. In 2019, the legislature decided that was too much, and they point blank just lopped it off. So if a municipality was charging 5%, they now got to charge 4%. If a municipality was charging a 3% fee, they got to charge 2%. If a municipality was charging a 1% fee, now it was 0. And that is what happened in 2019. So it was stepped down. So at first it went down by 0.5, then it went down by 1. But where we are now at is everybody is now stepped down by 1 point. If a municipality did not have any fee in place by the end of 2018, they can no longer even assess a fee on cable company revenue on the cable side. I do have in here that if your city is in that situation, you can assess fees on right-of-way use. And so you could talk to your city attorney about that if you are in a situation where you're getting no money at all from the cable company through franchise fees. Because that is like sort of an alternative way to raise funds. And that is what franchise fees or video service provider fees are completely based on. Hey, Jake, could you close that door? Is the whole premise of video service provider fees is that cable companies use city rights of way to make a private profit, and therefore the municipality should get a little bit of pay for that. Okay, so while that amount of money went down by a point, the state legislature also agreed to make up for that loss to municipalities. So if you had a 5% fee and now you're at 4%, that 1% that you lost, you're going to get that in state aid. And that state aid is going forward at 2019 levels ad infinitum as long as every 2 years the legislature puts it in the budget. So last spring, I guess it was, we spent a lot of time making sure legislators understood that this piece of the budget was very important to us and what it was for, and that they promised, and they better put it back in the budget for this next biennium. And we'll be doing that every 2 years going forward. In addition, municipalities every 2 years, I believe it'll have to be. I'll have to double check that. But you'll also have to fill out a form, either every year or every other year, to say, yes, I'm assessing a fee, and we want this revenue sharing, this state aid. So there's going to be a hoop that municipalities have to jump through every year, every 2 years. Okay. The other thing that you should know is that you don't have to take your word, the word of cable companies or the video service providers that they are paying you the video service provider fees that you are due. You can review the business records of your provider going back 4 years, and if there's a discrepancy in what they paid you and what they should have paid you, you can negotiate and get that remedied. Number 3. Let's say a new provider comes into your town like TDS. They are required to also provide the same number of access channels that your legacy provider provides. And they also have to pay the same video service provider fee that your legacy provider provides. Okay, if you're in a situation where you don't have a PEG channel and you want one, it's very difficult in the state to get a PEG channel. Bottom line is, yeah. So under state law, any area that has a population of 50,000 or more being served by the same company head end can have 3 access channels in total, unless they're grandfathered. Whatever access channels were in existence in 2008, we got to keep. But let's say you want to create a new access channel. Everything is considered based on the company head end. So if the company head end serves southern Wisconsin, by law, they only have to provide 3 access channels for that whole region. If the population is over 50,000. If the population that they serve out of a head end is less than 50,000, then they only have to provide 2 access channels. So under these circumstances, it's very unlikely that anyone can get an access channel unless they're in an unusual situation where a head end actually is serving just a very small amount of cities somewhere that maybe never got an access channel before. It's possible, but I don't know if you have to find out the technology there. Is like, where are the head ends? Where are the head ends serving? All of that. The other thing I just want to point out is that you can enter into intergovernmental agreements to program an access channel. So if you're part of if you want to create a consortium amongst cities to program an access channel, you can do that. You can have like five cities programming one channel and work out how you're going to fund that and all that. Okay, number 5. In the state law, it says that a video service provider can take back a PEG channel if it's underutilized. Underutilized or substantially utilized, what you have to meet is 40 hours of programming per week, and 60% of that is locally produced, or 24 hours a week. Locally produced is not defined, so I don't know. Maybe it could be locally produced in Manawa, or Manawa? Manawa. That's not specified. I have not seen any cable company actually use that provision, though. 6, video service providers must provide the transmission lines connecting PEG channel origination points to the head end if they existed in that location prior to January 8th, 2008. So again, this is a grandfathered section. So if your city was programming a PEG channel from, let's say, your high school and your city hall, cable companies are required to provide the transmission line between those spots and their head end going forward. The problem we have with this provision, though, however, is that they can program that channel in any way they choose that is economically and technologically efficient. So what's happened to us is that they have chosen that the technology, standard definition, in an efficient manner, which is maintaining the lines to send that signal, but not improving those lines. So we have a situation where they are following the letter of the law here, where they are transmitting our programming on these existing lines, but they are not going to upgrade our transmission, and they're not going to upgrade those lines unless we pay for it. And so we're stuck with SD. We don't have HD because of that, unless we decide to pay for it. And one of the things that we just found out is that if you want an upgraded transmission equipment, it's going to cost about $9,800. If you want to upgrade your lines, it all depends on your situation, and they will do it for a price to be named by them. And then if you want HD, they are happy to transmit you in HD for $780 per month. And so if this actually went through, if all of our member stations, which we now have 53 of them, if we all got a new piece of transmission equipment and we all paid Charter $780 a month for this, it would be $1 million next year. So that's all they want. So it's not in the spirit of the law. If we were still operating under local franchising, this would never happen, because the local franchise, we would have negotiated and said, look, everything on cable is in HD. SD is 20th century technology. You need to upgrade. And they would have had to have done it, and they would have negotiated, and it would have gotten done. But because it's a state law and it's static, we're kind of stuck with this old technology. We also have to pay for the transmission equipment. So we have to have transmission equipment that is compatible with their system. So what is compatible with their system is 20th century technology. And what is compatible with their system is equipment that's 30 years old that is no longer being sold. So we're in a situation now where our equipment is breaking down, there's outages, it's hard to find old equipment to replace it. But again, it's the letter of the law. The cable companies are, hey, we'll transmit it but you just have to find these old analog modulators to do it on these old wires, and we're happy to do it, just like the law says. So that is a problem, because we've got City of Merrill off the air now since Christmas. We've got the City of Green Bay, who basically gave up their channels because they couldn't find a modulator that worked, and it's going to happen more and more. And then finally, customer service standards. There is a passage of customer service standards in our state law, but it handles the service standards for customers, for end-use customers. So if we have an outage, there's like no protection in state law whatsoever. There's nothing that we, as municipalities or PEG stations, we cannot go to the Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection and say, we have an outage, do something. We have no protection at all. So no technical standards, no protection for outages, 20th century technology, we have to pay for old equipment. We're in a very bad situation, and we'll be talking more about that in our annual meeting later this afternoon about how we plan to kind of address these difficulties. All right, so is there anybody who wants a quick question right now about anything I covered? Okay, Jake is now going to talk about operating policies.
Thanks, Mary. Yeah, for those of you who may not know me, my name is Jake Timm, Operations Coordinator at the City of Oshkosh, President of WCM. Just before we move on to operating policies, just a couple of things from Mary's presentation. Mary is like the encyclopedia on these laws in this state. If you have a question, ask her. And what I've found out over the 5+ years that I've been doing this here in Oshkosh is it's important to know what that law actually says, because most cable providers that I've talked to, when I reference the law in any way, they have a very different interpretation of what it means than we do most of the time. So they will do less than or equal to the bare minimum that is required, and they will always assume that they know the law better than you do. So it's important to just understand what Mary just went through in a very basic way, because if you get into one of those conversations, it's easy to get overwhelmed by someone who works in government affairs and deals with that on a regular basis. Mary mentioned TDS specifically. They are building out into a lot of communities right now in Wisconsin. Oshkosh is included in that. If they are building out in your community, you should receive a letter in the mail. It might come to your clerk's office, it might go to your city manager or your mayor, it may come to you, but they're required to inform you that they are providing video service, and they will then ask you, would you like for us to include your PEG channels in that service? And then you have X amount of days defined by the law to respond and say, yes, I would like to. They'll have contact info in the letter. And if they are building out and you haven't been informed, we have contact info for the government affairs folks from TDS for the state of Wisconsin that we can get you in touch with them as well. So having said all that, moving on to policies, the most exciting and fun topic of the conference. We are lucky that over the 35 years or so that we've been in existence, that we have developed and adapted the policies that we have. We have two different channels in Oshkosh. We have a government access channel and a public access channel. The policies that govern those are very different. I'll talk more about the public side because I think that is kind of more relevant to the program sharing topic that we're talking about. So in number one under this, you can see that we encourage you to establish a priority list of categories of programming. If you look at our policy document, it's local producer programming, stuff that comes from someone else around the state or from WCM or some local or regional entity, and then basically everything else. So, back when we had a satellite dish, we would pull stuff off, from NASA or whatever. Filler programming that comes from just about anywhere. But if you have that hierarchy in place in a policy document that's blessed by a city manager or a mayor or a council or whoever, if that's approved, that gives you some protection. That gives you some ability to say, no one can just walk in off the street from anywhere and say, my program needs to air at this time, over your local programming or whatever. So give yourself that ability to protect yourself, say no if you are able to do so. Mission statements, I know, can be a tedious process of going through and developing one, and sometimes it can feel like you print it off in a policy book or print it off on your wall and never really look at it again. But as an example, under 3, this is from our Life TV, our public access channel. Provide an electronic free speech forum that promotes, encourages, and reflects the cultural diversity of the community. A lot of times when you're going through the mission statement process, the mission statement that comes out on the end is almost not the most important part. It's all of the talking about what is it exactly we're trying to do here. And that winds up feeding down the rest of the bullets in your policy book. So it's more of a process, and you get the mission statement that sounds good on the other end that boils everything down. But when you go through that process, you learn a lot about what it is you're trying to do and trying to say. Number 4, requiring imported program producers to take full responsibility for their programs. We have forms that local producers will fill out and say, this is my program, I made it, I'm not affiliated with the city, I'm not affiliated with Charter Cable, I'm not affiliated with anybody, this is my deal, this is my thing. And then we just have a quick disclaimer that airs on the front of those programs. It's just, this is a local producer program. You know, we're no way affiliated with the city or whatever, so say whatever you want. That's what the public access channel is there for. Free speech, just like it says in the mission statement. But again, protect yourselves as your channels and say, we're here for you to use your free speech, but that's your free speech, not the cities or not our peg channels. Another good point in number 5, I'll just kind of sum it up. Make your policies broad. Do not sit down and try and think of every single exception. Well, what if someone brings this in? Well, what if somebody does this? Or what if those things are going to come up, and then you will have to decide on a case-by-case basis. What does our policy say? What was our intent when we made this policy this way? There are things that are going to happen and that continue to happen to us where you say, well, what does the policy say? And you go back to look and you're like, I don't really know. we didn't really address that. We never really thought of that before. But you handle those things on a case-by-case basis. The policies are really meant to just kind of address the day-to-day, point you in the right direction, and give you some guidance when you are addressed with things that are more routine and happen on a day-to-day basis. A really good point that Mary put in here under number 5, we don't screen content, we don't edit content. If someone brings in a public access program and they follow all the rules as far as formatting and whatever else, it goes on the air. And it's not our job to edit that stuff. It's not our job to screen that stuff. We're here to provide the outlet. That's what we do. They create the content. We have some things that address generally offensive programming. We rely on the FCC standards for things like that, and there are ways to address that and move that into late night, or if it's violent in any way or anything along those lines, there may be an instance where a program needs to get pulled. But that's never happened with us since I've been here. That guy right there was in my seat before I was. I don't know, it's happened a few times in the past. So there are times where you're going to be confronted with that. But if you have a policy that addresses that, it allows you to say, this is what's in our policy and this is why. Not just, I don't really like this, or so-and-so said they don't like this. You can get into an instance where you may have a supervisor or a council member or a mayor or a city manager who says that they don't like something. Maybe somebody went on the public access channel and said they were saying bad stuff about me and I don't like it. If they're not lying, that's what the channel is there for. It's a free speech forum. That's the way it is. If you have a policy that says we're not going to yank programming because our city manager, mayor, or council doesn't like it, there it is, especially if it's approved by those entities beforehand. They all look through it and say, yeah, this works. But if they ever want to come back and say, well, yeah, it works, but I don't want it to work for me. Like, well, you approved it. You've seen this. You've blessed it. So I guess the last thing I would follow up with then, and number 6 kind of dovetails with that, is involve whether it's a supervisor, go as high as you can. We get ours approved by the city manager. That happens every 2 or 3 years, I would say, where we make changes. We made a bunch of changes to where we're available and streaming and on OTT and other things like that. And so as technology changes, your policies will likely change, your offerings will change. So as you make updates to it and as you feel necessary, if enough changes have been made and they're not just grammatical things, involve your city manager. If you need to go to the council, but get that high-level approval. Number one, so people are aware that it exists. But number two, to protect yourself again, because having good policy documents is really about giving yourself something to fall back on when someone asks you a question and you aren't necessarily sure what the answer might be. So, you want to talk about ASCAP and BMI?
Okay, this is like the fun part of the program. So we've been tracking down and trying to figure out exactly what our rights are under ASCAP and BMI for a long time. And what we finally definitively have found out over the last couple of years, and from BMI really just in the last few months, is that we are covered as PEG access stations. We are covered by the agreement cable companies have with BMI and ASCAP. So that means that if you do a choir concert and those high school kids are singing, you know, I don't know, Deep Purple, you know, that is fine. I don't know where that came from. Well, I'm just trying to relate to my audience here. Anyway, that's fine. If you are covering a football game and during the halftime they blare Adele or Jimi Hendrix, you're covered. If you cover like a skating competition or the Ice Capades or something like that, and the skaters are skating to popular music, you are covered. So basically, anything that you broadcast that is covered by an agreement, either the song itself or the performance, because that's two different things in law. Not only the song, but the performance of that song. You are covered under both BMI and ASCAP on your PEG access channel. This does not apply to web streaming, YouTube, anything else. If you do try to put the Ice Capades on YouTube, they're going to slap you down and threaten you. So it's another reason why cable access channels are nice, because we can offer that to our community. You know, we can put the Ice Capades on there. And that is, again, that allows you to think about covering things that you might not have otherwise thought of covering. You can go into a local bar and cover a band, and you can play it on your access channel, and that is just fine. You can invite a band into your studio and have them play, and that's covered by BMI and ASCAP. Yeah, Mike? Karaoke programs. Yeah. So, I mean, this is something, again, it's just so liberating, because I think for a long time we were just not quite sure where we stood. But it's very, very clear to us now that we are covered. We have talked to BMI and ASCAP ad nauseum about this. But we're a PEG channel. We're not, a cable company. You're covered. So, feel very comfortable in doing that kind of programming.
And, we have our own ASCAP agreement. Would that allow us to do co-simultaneous?
I mean, if you want to purchase an ASCAP agreement for web streaming, is that what you're saying? Because you don't need it for your cable channel.
So the city of Cardona has an ASCAP license.
Okay.
They've had it since I've been there. Nobody knows why. We just keep renewing it every year.
For music at public venues, we have the Leach Amphitheater, which is owned by the city in Oshkosh, and in order to bring bands into that venue, just like a bar would need
Right.
an ASCAP or a BMI license.
You want to?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry about that. I'm going to tell you right now. I probably spent more time than anything yelling at council members and presenters to talking to microphones in there. I stand over there not talking into a microphone. the city of Oshkosh, I can say, if as a for instance, Amber has an ASCAP BMI license, an ASCAP and a BMI license, because the city owns an amphitheater where we have music and bands and whatnot. And in order to do that, you have to have that license. So that's why our city has one. I don't know if your city has similar venues. And
In terms of that license is different.
sure,
That's so there's public performances as opposed to.
sure. Yep, and they're different for bars too, and they're based on capacity and frequency, and that's how much you pay. So it's very different for everyone. It's not just a blanket like I pay the same as you, and I have a license and I can do whatever I want. It's kind of messy, but I can say from our standpoint, that's why our city has one. Yeah, you would have to get a hold of somebody there. You probably want the license number, some kind of reference for them, so that they can actually check on you specifically. And find out how much it costs and all that kind of stuff too. Josh has something to say.
I just did all the research on the music licensing, so the blanket licenses that facilities have, and they cover what happens within your facility. So any piece of property you have, it does not cover.
Wait, Josh.
So I just did a bunch of research on the music licensing for city facilities, and spent a lot of time on the phone with all four ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, GMR about it, because we're doing more stuff with music on our property, and specifically asked, so the blanket licenses that the cities have that cover your facilities do not cover anything outside your facility. So they view you, whether it's an LPFM, whether it's putting it on the internet, that's all a complete separate thing. So if you've got the blanket license for the facilities, it does not cover you for anything else. That would be a separate agreement you'd need to get.
Does anybody have an ASCAP or BMI agreement for web streaming?
Okay, I can talk about that.
Good.
So we do have an ASCAP and BMI license for our LPFM radio station, but the license you need to live stream those on the website is actually through a different company called Sound Exchange, and they just raised their annual fee for LPFMs from $500 to $1,000 this past year. So if you have an LPFM station, a low power FM radio station that you're looking to get onto the web to web stream, you will have to go through the company called Sound Exchange. They have a whole separate process that you go through for web streaming. For the radio station?
We can talk about web streaming for video. What about that? I mean, for media centers, I mean, independent producers I know.
Mhm.
What about the city streaming video on the web? How do you
I guess I'm not following. Go ahead.
So Mike, and I'll toss this out, maybe Mike knows the answer. So if you have a website and you have video on demand and you are putting your programming there, you're broadcasting your programming on the web. That is not covered by the cable company BMI ASCAP agreements. Does anybody here know anything about that? How do you pursue a BMI or ASCAP agreement to stream on the web your video content?
It's a digital license.
Digital license?
It is separate.
Yeah.
It's a separate account number as well.
Do you want to talk a
I
little?
mean, I have all that. If someone
Well,
wants-
you want
Yeah.
This is the sharing part of
Yeah.
it.
Share. This is good.
I actually spoke to all the representatives as well, and we do pay for a separate license. It's about $390 for just each one. ASCAP's a little cheaper, I think, and it's a digital license that covers our Roku, our Amazon Fire, as well as Apple TV and our website. So that's called a digital license.
$398.
Yeah, that's what I'm paying.
Say that again.
Because that's, it's a certain amount of it's not revenue, but I have all the emails. If someone wants to come and see me, I can give you contacts that I spoke with. They're very helpful.
Okay, well, let's get together. This is
Yep.
Tom Laux from Marshfield.
Marshfield, so,
And one question for you, Tom, and I'll speak up, so that I can't get up there. Is that worth it for the type of content you're producing regularly? Do you have enough content with that sort of popularly licensed material to be able to justify the expense?
I believe so.
Repeat his question.
The question is, do we have enough material to justify the cost of paying $390 per license, ASCAP or BMI.
Per year.
Per year. I believe so. We have over 13 local churches, and there's a lot of programming on there that has music, and we're streaming that on our website. If we weren't streaming, then no, we wouldn't need anything like Mary says. If it was just on our cable access stations, we're covered. But since we're streaming, and I think we had a seminar a year or two ago on this, I made sure that we pay it. So pretty easy. They help a lot. So if anybody wants to see me, I have some really good contacts. Glad to share them with you or share any emails. I have it in my computer now. So
Send it to me. Will you?
yep. Mhm.
One other thing I'll say from a video standpoint, and I'll come right back to you. When we used to just stream to YouTube. We were only streaming live on YouTube before we just went another route with playback servers and got our own setup and did our own deal. But we used to stream strictly to YouTube, and we would get booted all of the time because our radio station is underneath our billboard, our community bulletin board that airs over the evening hours. So YouTube's algorithm would boot us so our YouTube channel would get shut down. Even though we do have a Sound Exchange license, we're totally licensed to stream, on the internet and everything is fine. But, YouTube's that you get booted. And then you go through the process of getting your channel back up. So you had a question.
I'm a producer in Sun Prairie. I use Facebook Live for my shows, and so on my music show, I'm getting muted. It doesn't matter how many times I tell them what's going on, that we are a radio station. Bring it back up. They'll unmute it, but I have to go through the process.
Yeah.
And is there any way, anything that we can do, or any what you're talking about associated with that?
That's a great question, and I think it kind of is your.
YouTube also. I'm doing live on YouTube.
Yep.
At the same time.
Do you ever get booted off of YouTube for the same deal?
YouTube.
Never, huh? I mean, I think your issue is kind of similar to the one I just described that we used to have with YouTube. I really don't have a good answer for you on that, no. As far as social media and the internet goes, I don't know. You see a lot. You can search YouTube for music, for song videos, and people are posting them constantly, and they've got 10 million views, and it's been on there for 3 years. You're like, why is this video allowed to be here? But if my radio show that I'm fully licensed for is not allowed on Facebook. I share in your pain. I share in the misunderstanding of the deal. I wish I had a better answer for you, but I don't. And I would come back to your question and say the same thing. Tom, I need more information from Tom on the digital licensing. And I think that would be the route to go that would allow a PEG station to cover its local producers, because technically your content is appearing on that channel. If that channel is licensed, then I'm not a lawyer, but in theory, your content would be covered under that license.
And access producer as well, and we distribute our program to a whole bunch of different access stations.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It gets really complicated.
Yeah. The comment was that he's a local producer and distributes his programming to a lot of different stations, and I don't think you're alone in that. The independent producer group is growing. We help people distribute over MediaFire. And Mike or Mary, maybe this is almost more of a law thing, but I think it's on the channel. It's on us to make sure we're licensed. You drop off the content, it's on us as the channel holder and the programmer to make sure that we are operating correctly. So from an independent producer standpoint, unless you have your own TV channel that you need to get your licenses for, I think it's on us to make sure that we are doing that correctly. Come on back, Tom.
I've asked that question too. You have to you have that. You were talking about disclaimers earlier, and I had thought that would cover the city or the PEG station, even if you didn't have a license. I don't know. That's what I want to know. But that's why we went ahead and bought it.
Let me step in
We
here.
bought it anyway.
So think of it this way.
Go ahead.
So by law, cable companies cannot interfere with the content of PEG channels. So we are essentially an independent producer on a cable company system, and we're covered. Anything we do is covered. So it's got to be the same way for the channel itself. We bring in independent producers ourselves, and they are covered because they are on the PEG channel.
On TV.
On TV, yeah.
On cable.
On cable, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and so the theory of that is that channel capacity is not yours, it's the cable companies. They license everything that's on their
Yeah.
Right, so that's the theory
Right.
of why that works. If you're, and
Yeah.
you know, so even though we often think of them as our channels, we get them through an agreement.
Correct. Right.
But the web streaming is still murky on that.
Yeah, web streaming. I mean, actually, $320 a year for an ASCAP license for.
Approximately.
Yeah, I mean that's not bad, really. I don't think. Okay, before we run out of time, so what we want to do is just show you how to share programs using WCM's website. So this is not my computer, but I will endeavor to use it. So. Let's see. So first of all, I have not logged in at all. I'm just going to the public website. You go to resources, slide down to program sharing, click program sharing. Is that how you do it? Okay, there we go. Okay, then you come to this page and you put in WCM up. Oh, sorry, thank you. Where's Mike Lister when you need him? WCM upload. Okay, and then you come to this page, which I call the tomato page, and just click upload content. And you put the same thing in again because for some reason that's what it does. WCM upload again. Okay, then you get to this page, and how do I make it scroll down further? Jeez. Press this one? Okay. All right, so you go, yeah, keep going down. Okay. So you come to this page. This is the MediaFire system we use. You can keep going down. Okay.
Or use the arrows if you want.
Oh, I like the arrows. Okay. So you have a program. We tell you what the naming conventions are. You go down over here and you say, okay, it's a government politics program. You click that. And it opens up into MediaFire where you can drop your show in. You can either click that, does that say upload? Right up here? Yep. Upgrade? Oh, I see.
I'm guessing it's because you're not logged in.
Anyway, you can add a file down here, or you can just drop one in. But it'll work for you once you get here. Okay, so like I could click that. And then you can select from your computer what file you want to upload, and you upload it. Okay, so that's how that works. Now, I want to escape. I want to go back. How do I, sorry. I want to go to the previous page. I guess back to media, file sharing. Yeah, okay. All right, I guess I needed to just go up there. Okay. So then what we want you to do is advertise it in the forum. And this button leads you to the member website. Now at this point, you would need to log in. So log in. And if you're a WCM member, you can log in. So I'm going to log in my name. And my password is thank you.
Technology.
Anybody want to do my job? Feel free. Don't say that. Okay. So.
Harry's a Mac user. Easier.
Okay. So now you come to our member homepage. And here is the forum again. So click that. And what you have here is a number of different kinds of things that you can participate in. Most of these are some of these are for just station member key contacts. Some is actually for the public, so the public could actually see that and participate. Some are for all WCM members, and that's what program sharing is. It's for all WCM members. So click on that one. And then, where it says New Topic, click on New Topic. And then tell us about your show, attach a YouTube link, do whatever you want, and then this message goes out to our 300-some members, letting people know about the new show you've got that's available. Okay? So that's what you get as an independent producer member. If you're not an independent producer member, you can also talk to your media center manager if you're a community producer and say, I'd love to share this program statewide. Can you upload it for me? And they can do that. The other way to get to this, is you can log in on the public site. And when you log in on the public site with your username and password, you come to this member homepage. And you can go down under here to program sharing for MediaFire. And here, you can either upload to MediaFire, and you'll get to those pages I showed you at the beginning with the tomatoes and the blue screen and all that. It loads directly to that. Or if you're a key contact of a media center, you can do this download content. And on this page, which is open to key contacts, it'll give you the link for MediaFire. It'll tell you what the username is for MediaFire, what the password is for MediaFire. And then you can just go there directly and then see what's on MediaFire. So, like, you could go to this. And where's the login?
It's already there, so just click login.
Fabulous.
Click on the other side.
Dismiss.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's MediaFire itself, and here are those categories that we told you about. And basically, you know, if somebody's looking for performances, here are all the shows we have that are performances, and somebody can go here, select one, and download it for air. So that's how our system works. Okay, and pretty much I gave you the instructions on this handout. So I think we have a little bit more time, like 8 minutes, for questions. I'm sorry it ran a little longer than we expected, but I think that was a good BMI ASCAP discussion. Do you guys have any other questions? Andy?
Circling back to when you started speaking about video service providers only provide the fee based on cable television service. Spectrum now has a streaming service only available through their Spectrum app, and our PEG channels are not available through it. And I guess I'm wondering if, just a point of discussion, if maybe the reason why they're not providing our PEG channels through that is because it might muddy the waters, that, then all of a sudden, PEG channels are available through a different platform other than cable TV, and maybe that's why they're not.
It's not as hard as they say it is.
Well, I mean, number one, Mike is dying to talk about this, but you're going to have to come up.
I'll follow up with you.
Okay, well, first of all, cable companies are required to put PEG channels on their cable system. So these streaming applications are not cable, and there's no law requiring them to stream PEG channels. It's on the information services side of their business, and therefore there's absolutely no regulation of that and how they handle it. As far as why they would not want to put PEG channels on there, why would they want to? I mean, they have never had any interest in promoting PEG in their 40, 50-year history, so why would they start now? If you want to follow up with anything else, that'd be great. Yeah. Oh, sure.
Sure. And hey, I'm Mike Wassenaar from ACM. It's good to see folks. So the specific question with charter is an interesting one. For our member stations in Maine, their franchises are locally based, right? And in a couple of instances, there are actually jurisdictions that are receiving franchise fees from that service that you're talking about. Because while it's an app, they have a franchise for the wiring, and they're providing a live television service, which, while Mary is correct about cable franchising not affecting broadband, what they're doing classifies as a Title VI service. So they're actually paying franchise fees. The muddied water is that for our colleagues in Maine, they're actually receiving PEG channels from Brooklyn, believe it or not, because it's like, and my guess is it's because the engineers didn't really think through exactly how to be able to deliver the content. So it's a question that still needs to be defined. I think it's going to be very much dependent upon whether or not there is statutory language at the local or state level that has to do with where a PEG channel exists. And I think that the bad news for you is that since Wisconsin is a state franchising state, you're sort of stuck on Cable Island, even though that sure looks to be a cable service, right? So I would guess that Wisconsin law has no mechanism to be able to force the company to provide a channel onto a cable service. And in fact, a lot of franchises, local franchises exist, say things like the PEG channel should be on the local broadcast tier or the basic tier of service or something like that, which is not specifically what you're describing, right? Which is sort of the loophole in language for a lot of local franchises that were negotiated in the last 10 years that I think people are looking at now. And barring some sort of change at the state level here, I think there's very little to do about it. I think the open question is whether or not you'll get revenue from it. And I think that's something that should be monitored, because in other states, it's being described as a Title VI service, which is subject to cable franchising, right? So this is something I think that Wisconsin should be monitoring. So that's something I wanted to add on to what you were describing, Mary. Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions, thoughts? Alrighty. Thank you guys for joining us. Hopefully this was helpful. You learned something, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.